evening, Metal Faithful. It is I, the mandated reporter, and frankly unmortified Mr. Mark Radulich. And this is the Metal Hammer of Doom, our first official review show of 2021. And 2020 was a little weird. One might even say it was absurd. Some might even say it was an absurd circus. Well, if that doesn't tell you what we're reviewing tonight, I don't know what will. Tonight, we are reviewing Italian power metal band Labyrinth and their newest album, their 9th album, as a matter of fact, Welcome to the Absurd Circus. And I'm welcoming back to the show my good friend and cohort, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Doesn't podcast a lot these days, Jesse Starcher. How do you do, sir?
I do not podcast a lot these days. Oh, Mark Radulich, it's 2021. I'm glad to be back here on the Metal Hammer of Doom. And, ooh, boy, we're stepping into a realm of Italian power metal. And don't let the power fool you, folks. I think there's a little bit of progressive while we get into it. So Labyrinth, I've never heard of them up until listening to this album. How about you, Mark? Is this a band that was on your radar at all?
Yes and no. I knew of them. I think I knew of them because for a while, and I don't know if it's still going on, it might not be, there was a power and progressive metal fest that was coming around every year. I think it took place in Georgia. And it was, my goal in life was to get to one of these shows. And I remember, they would list a whole bunch of bands that were on them. And I think just from being sort of fully engaged in the whole, progressive power metal scene, there were bands that I knew existed, but might not have listened to a lot of. Labyrinth was one of those bands.
Okay. Yeah. They've flew under the radar for me. So, jumping into this album, I didn't know what to expect. Welcome to the Absurd Circus. I'd expect ICP to show up here at some point or something.
Oh, here come the Juggalos.
Yes, sir.
So, writing for Metal Hammer Italia, Gianfranco Moniz said that the album, as the title suggests, is a work with the band's trademark is mixed with extravagance, where the songs contain colorful solutions in order to play and sing the illogic of delicate times like these that have in the coronavirus the icing on the cake.
Okay.
He also thought the album is more guitar-oriented than its predecessors, albeit in step with the times.
Okay.
All right.
Sounds good. Are we medleying tonight? Are we going 3-3-3? Is that how we're going to do things?
Yeah. I don't think we're going to ever go back to track unless we really have something to talk about with each track.
Yeah, it's tough to find a lot to talk about here. I've got notes, but really, with 3 medleys of 3 is perfectly fine for this album, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I think when we're just sort of, checking out an album, seeing what we think of it, and then, maybe tell a story or two, beat a child, whatever we need to do during the podcast. Have a child fall through their bed, their
that
dilapidated
happens.
bunk bed.
Yes.
Have another child run drunkenly into the wall on the way to the bathroom for some apparent reason.
That happens. That happens.
The Metal Hammer of Doom, a.k.a. Dad's Talking Metal Podcast.
Pretty much.
Look, if we have an album where we can, where the two cisgendered white male fathers, and family men can talk about delicate political matters and what is it like to be a black woman in this world, we'll do that. We'll do that.
Yes, you can guarantee it, sir. Guarantee.
If you're interested in the philosophy and political underpinnings of two middle-aged cisgendered white men, we've got that for you.
2021 awaits, ladies and gentlemen. What can possibly be out there in the metal world that these guys could really dive into? Well, I'll tell you right now, Labyrinth is not going to be one of them, but we're going to be here to at least let you know what we think of the album.
Yep. All right. So let's get into it here. let's go ahead and play the first 3 tracks. We've got The Absurd Circus, Live Today, and One More Last Chance. computer's running a little slow tonight. How did that sound to you?
Sounded okay right till the end. I think when you hit pause, it became like I was listening to the radio for some reason. But everything else sounded good. So you're doing fine so far.
Yeah, like I said, my computer, it's not quite what the old computer was doing where, anytime I moved the mouse, it took 5 minutes for the computer to catch up to what I was doing. But there's been some, signs that I probably need to turn the computer off after we're done here tonight.
Might be a good idea.
Yeah, it's running a little slow. Probably have a virus. Anyway, so Live Today was out of the three of them, was the best one.
Yeah, I actually have that as my pick for our new 2021 Best of Metal Hammer of Doom playlist. I'll gladly give that to you if you like, because I'll take Absurd Circus if you have your heart set on Live Today. But yeah, okay, all right. Well, I'm taking Absurd Circus then.
All right, plugs.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I believe that the top two songs to start this album out are great.
Yeah.
They're metal. They're heavy. You've got some superb vocals. You got some blazing keyboards. And that first track is a little over 6 minutes. And to be honest, it doesn't feel like that. The Absurd Circus doesn't feel like 6 minutes to me. We will encounter some tracks later on in this album that definitely feel like 6 minutes.
Feel their length, huh?
Yes, you can feel that length all up in you.
and we're off.
Yes, sir. But yeah, Live Today's great. One More Last Chance, it's okay for me personally. I'm not extremely interested in that track. There's just not anything that jumps out and grabs me. It's more progressive than anything else. And really, in my opinion, just overstays its welcome a little bit. But as for the first three, I think our first two are great. It's the downward trend that starts in track 3 that, for me personally, I'm not saying they're bad songs. I'm just saying, you got to jump out and get me going with the first two tracks. You got to keep that pace up, in my opinion. That doesn't happen with track 3.
Yeah, I can tell you right now, when I gave this album its listen, it's good. If you like this kind of music, this fits into the genre like a hand in glove. The problem is, if you listen to 5 other ones just like it, I couldn't tell you the difference between them.
Yeah, they're all going to look like the same glove. It's all very much progressive, and it's just nothing that keeps me interested as the album goes on. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as we hit the next tracks. But yeah, I'm right there with you, man. I mean, those first two tracks are great, and then we just kind of fall into samey land real quick.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's not beat a dead horse or around the bush or anything like that. Let's go ahead and do the next 3 tracks. As Long as It Lasts, Den of Snakes, and Words Minefield. All right, so that was As Long As It Lasts, Den of Snakes, and Words Minefield. Let me say that As Long As It Lasts kind of reminded me of like an old 80s hair metal band.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it had kind of like an old school Def Leppard feel to it, which I really liked. Not enough to say like that's my pick, because but I do like my Def Leppard. I've seen them enough times in concert.
I understand that, sir. Absolutely. So, of these three songs, there's two of them that stood out to me that I kind of made some notes on. Den of Snakes and Words Minefield, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I jumped in there and I was like, let's see what these lyrics are talking about. Because I don't know if you remember hearing in Den of Snakes, as we get towards the end, there's a bit of a spoken word part where if you're listening, you can hear him talking about like social media.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, well, let's check this out, see what it's talking about. So Den of Snakes, when you jump into the lyrics of that, it is definitely a commentary on social media. The song's decent enough, and I appreciate the message, but it's definitely telling people, hey, it's Den of Snakes. I mean, there is not really that much positivity out there. You're not going to find too many good things to talk about usually when it comes to social media. You can have a lot of fun with memes, but trust me, there's a lot more negativity out there than it seems like positivity anymore. And then if you listen as we go into track 6, Words Minefield actually sounds similar to Den of Snakes. And I noticed that earlier listening to it, and then you just played it again, I could still hear it. Even in the little bit that you played, it sounds like the same chords, maybe, I don't know, but it sounds very similar. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to read you some of the lyrics from Words Minefield because I think it ties back into that same concept. So, muzzled by new hypocrites and their rules, can't you see? Whited sepulchres, words minefield, away from any truth and common sense, careless as never before. This old world has been turned upside down. What was right yesterday is wrong today. Progress should bring wisdom and compassion, love and unity. We are sadly scattered in pieces. I will tell you that of the 11 songs off of this album, those two, if we're talking about speaking and talking of a message, because there's songs about love on here. There's songs about just about anything you can think of in the power metal, progressive metal genre. But these two right here seem very timely. And you talked about the concept, and I'm putting that in quotes, that they were talking about with the Absurd Circus. And yeah, when you look around, folks, you can see the Absurd Circus in your daily life, especially when it comes to social media.
All right. So this next trio of songs we've got is The Unexpected. We have a cover. We have Dancing with Tears in My Eyes by Ultravox.
Mm-hmm.
You have any idea what an Ultravox is?
No, I popped into the internets and looked up Ultravox. Apparently this came out in 1984. And as for the original song, no, I have no idea. I'm looking to see if they are they charted on the UK charts, obviously, but it hit, I think, it peaked at number 3 originally on the UK singles chart. So it's a big song over there in Europe.
Them Europeans like it when they're not locked down.
That's right. They can sit inside and listen to their synth pop all day long.
All right, here we go. So next trio of songs, we've got, as I said, The Unexpected, Dancing with Tears in My Eyes, and Sleepwalker. All right. So The Unexpected, Dancing with Tears in My Eyes, and Sleepwalker. Pretty good tunes. I really liked the introduction of like the synthesizer, especially in those last two.
Oh yeah,
last two songs. The Dancing with Tears in My Eyes felt every bit of 1984.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. At least it wasn't Battleship Chains. That's all I got to say about Dancing with Tears in My Eyes.
But I liked with the introduction of the synthesizer. The band kind of seems to oscillate from strictly the typical progressive power metal fare to kind of experimenting with some 80s sounding stuff, and they kind of go back and forth. And I tell you, I tend to prefer the 80s sounding stuff to just the traditional. I mean, the best part about this band is the drumming.
You like it? Okay.
The gallop in the drumming and the double bass drums, I'm really into, and it's keeping and I think it gives life to what would be just sort of standard kind of music. Mm-hmm. It gives it a bit of an edge. Certainly makes it more metal sounding.
Yes.
But but overall they were good. What'd you think?
Yeah, I mean, we're getting into the latter part of this album, and it's interesting when we hear, especially track 7, The Unexpected, and Sleepwalker, they both sound really heavy at the beginning, but then it's like the progressive kicks in. And obviously that's their thing. But it also, I want it to keep the pace up. Like my notes on The Unexpected were, we got a great metal start to this tune. Will it keep up the pace? And my answer to that was, well, it varies. It's a solid track nonetheless, but you can definitely see the progressive power metal that rings true through this band, specifically the progressive part with The Unexpected. Sleepwalker, yeah, I that stuck out to me the first time I heard that track, where the synths start, and I was like, oh, ooh, this is nice. But at the end of the song, I just wrote, it's okay. So for myself, it's still not grabbing the attention that I want this album, or keeping my attention. How's that? Because we get into the song, then we get into the long, floaty vocals. This guy is a great vocalist, by the way. I've got his name here. Taranti? Roberto Taranti. Fantastic.
That's racist.
Yeah. Them Italians and their meatballs. IKEA's Sweden and all that.
Listen, you can't call the singer Steve Tortellini, Jesse. That's racist.
Oh, boy. Well, if you tuned in because you saw that it was Labyrinth, welcome to the Absurd Circus. There's never been a more true title for that album and for this podcast.
So I've been dying to ask you two questions. One, like, you're the lyrics guy for sure. Like, you really delve into the lyrical content of any album that we do. And they made it a point to say that, like, God, so much of the music we're going to be listening to this year, I can already see it now, is going to be like a reflection of what everyone went through last year.
Yeah.
And that's certainly, we said at the top of the podcast that their experience of the lockdown and the coronavirus, and like when you think about, not that I want to get into a whole thing here, but when you think about what happened last year, they call it the free world for a reason. You're able to, you're able to, throughout Europe, North America, most of the world, you're able to get up, leave your house, go to a job, go seek out entertainment, find all the things in the world that you enjoy, and they're out there for you. And if you've got at least a way to pay for it, you can do those things. This isn't the most eloquent way of saying this, but basically, most people, to one degree or another, and I don't want to get into like a hot debate about this, but we're free. You were free to live your life. Mm-hmm. And then suddenly you weren't.
Yeah.
The free world was no longer free, at least for a time.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you want to, debate the merits of that argument, here's what you can't debate. We are social creatures, and for a great period of time, some more so than others, you weren't allowed to be social anymore. You know, you were trapped in whatever place you lived in, and that affected people. I mean, like every other article I feel like that I see on Facebook and Twitter that isn't having to do with a boxing match being canceled or a movie being postponed is about welcome to my personal hell that is my Twitter and Facebook feeds. Is how much people's mental health was affected by the pandemic. Because it's really like the last pandemic was over 100 years ago, and this is probably the first time in most people's lives that anything like this has ever happened.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, I mean, even in prison, you know, unless you're in one of those people who's forced to be in isolation for whatever the reasons are, you're still social.
Yeah. I mean, you're going to be able to talk to somebody.
Right.
They may not be in the same room, but they will be there to where they can hear your voice and you can hear their voice. And even at that point, at some point you're going to see them, whether you're getting a meal or whatever. So right. I hear you for sure. So you started this out with lyrics. How are you tying that in there?
Okay, so are you hearing that kind of anxiety and frustration and sort of decline in mental illness reflected in the lyrics of these songs?
Not as a whole. I mean, there's some songs that specifically stand out to me that it would seem that they were affected some way. So, for example, let's talk about Sleepwalker. We just heard that. It was track 9 off this album, okay? And there are some parts in this song that make me go, okay, yeah, I can identify with that. Now, one of the big things, before I get into just...
Like, can you give an example?
Well, yeah, I'm going to. Okay. I just want to... Let me set this up, though, real quick, because with myself, you know, they sent us home. My job sent us home. I've been working from home since the end of March last year, okay? And I've been working some crazy hours. So pretty much all I do is I get up in the morning, I walk down to my basement, and I sit at a desk for close to 13 hours. Now, I'm in a basement, okay? Granted, there could be other people that have better, more lavish work conditions, such as a window that they can look out of. I don't have that. I really feel
your basement doesn't even have like a little shoebox sized window.
Well, there is actually. There's a shoebox sized window that I could, in theory, open and then possibly may be able to squeeze out. But the view of said window is still under the ground. So I'm seeing I don't know if you have any idea what I'm talking about, but they'll put these like wells around these windows for basements. So I can't even see, the only thing I can see is maybe 3 inches of the sky.
Okay.
So that's about it.
So you have a lavish look of dirt.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
The point being is that I feel trapped at my own home. My wife, who has been homeschooling her the 2 boys, Kira's able to do stuff on her own, but she has to sit there every day. And I've never seen us as a family feel more stressed about being with each other than this past year. We need to get out.
Like, you guys didn't return to school at all since August?
Well, there's options you could. You could have sent the kids to school, but we have chosen the last 9 weeks and the 9 weeks before to kind of keep them from going to school. Now, when this next 9 weeks is up, I think we get another chance or choice to send them. But anyway, yeah. So we're at our wits' end sometimes with each other. We've been around each other for so long. We want to get out, and my wife has said to me over and over, "I want to leave. I want to do something. I want to go. You're talking about the free world, Mark, and you're right. It doesn't feel free because you can't go anywhere.
Can I make a recommendation that you sell your house and move to Florida, where we've learned to live with the COVID?
Yeah, apparently you guys are just like serving that at restaurants and everything. Like, okay, give me I need a hot dog and a
So you remember in Hook where like they imagine the food and then it appears and they eat it? That's what COVID is now. We just eat COVID. We drink it. We use it to fuel our cars. We've learned to live with it here in Florida.
The old 64-ounce of COVID Coke, please. That's what I want, along with my hot dog.
I'd like to have a COVID on rye with a little bit of mustard.
So Sleepwalker, in turn, I mean, is about a person who feels kind of caged up and wants to go, wants to get out, and they're sick of being in this case, the setting is the city. They want to get out and do something in the country. But again, they're just stuck to their daily doldrum, or that's not a good word. That's a made up word, actually. Their daily doldrum. How's that? Anyway, sure. They're stuck in their daily life, and they want to get out and go do something because it's just the same stuff over and over and over. So
I had a friend recently say, "Can we start doing scheduled Zooms?" Well, this is a friend that I call like once a week, once every other week, and in between that, like we'll send each other Google chats. We'll send each other messages on Google Chat, and we send each other's kids like presents, and we're going on vacation later this year, assuming they don't get close down the parks and cancel everything. We're supposed to be going on a staying at a resort later this year together. So like that's a good friend, and he's like, "Can we start scheduling like weekly Zooms?" And I'm like, "Sure." He was like, "Yeah, the now he lives in New York, another place that's under communist rule." And
it's bad up there.
Yeah, like California just lifted their stay-at-home order. I don't know where New York is, but I think he's in the same situation as you, where him, his wife, and his kids have all been trapped in the house since March of last year. This is almost a fucking year, and he's like, "I can't deal with the isolation anymore."
It's bad,
and it's hard because, like, again, I live in Florida, where we keep our pet COVID in the backyard, and then I ride it to work.
Fantastic.
But seriously, folks, like, and we've talked about this before on and off the air, that like my life changed in that like my kids and my wife were home for a period of time, but they've been back at school since the end of August, I guess, definitely since September.
Wow.
Yeah. We had the choice too to keep them home, and a lot of people have. But I think even like the people, at least in the county that I live in, the people who chose to keep their kids home for the first 9 weeks, the second 9 weeks has started. We're into the third quarter of the school year, and like 100 just in the school that they go to, like something like 100 some odd kids came back.
Are they sending you guys like emails and saying, "Hey, we've got 2 people that have been."
Yeah, every day somebody gets COVID.
All right. Well, that's kind of what I figured. I didn't know if that was what was going on.
My wife actually called me earlier today. She was like, they just had to quarantine like 4 of Lily's friends, and we just had a birthday party for her where we had kids from the school, and I'm like, did we have a spreader party? And they're like, no, it wasn't us. I'm like, whew!
Yeah,
I was deathly afraid the CDC was going to come and just like fucking tape up the house.
It looked like E.T. That scene, E.T. People. Yeah, we're still. I think in our case we're frightened of said virus. I'm having my mom over here Friday, and it's for her birthday. She's bringing her
And you haven't
husband.
seen your mom since like 1972 or some shit, right?
It's been a while. But she's she's coming over. And Mindy today, she was like, Mom had posted something on Facebook about how she was coming over and going to spend her birthday over here, have a little bit of a party. And Mindy's like, I wish you wouldn't have put that on there. Your sister's going to see that and feel bad about not being here. I said, my sister wants nothing to do with anybody right now because of the virus. Even if there is more than 3 people in a room, she doesn't even want to go, be expected to go into that room.
You know what's hilarious about that? So there's your sister, and I know a lot of people like her. There are people like they take this super seriously. They don't want to be around people. Some people have not left their house, even in the free state of Florida, where I've already made those jokes. I don't need to make them again. But where we've had the ability, like public events have taken place, not just riots. We burned stuff down. Like other than the riots, we've had social events here in Florida. But then there's like me and other people who are like bought tickets to things, and some of those things got canceled. Like I bought tickets to a basketball game, and within a week, they decided to just cancel fans for the month because like at that point, like it was like the Toronto Raptors opened their season in Tampa. The Toronto Raptors, because of Canada being on lockdown, moved to Tampa, and my wife was like, "We should go to a Toronto Raptors game," and I'm like, "When did you start liking basketball?" So, see, you never, even after 10 years, you still learn things about your spouse. And so I get the ticket, and there's all these games are for sale, and I pick one that, is good with our schedule. I buy the tickets. I announce on Facebook, hey, best husband ever, we're going to a basketball game. And then I get an alert, like within a few days. The Amelie Center is just canceling fans for the month of January because of the rise of COVID.
Jeez.
I'm like, and then like I'm like indignant and mad about it. I'm like, you motherfuckers, I've got a mask. Let me in. So it's like, two completely opposite points of view on this, where it's like, I don't want to be around people, I might die, and then there's me going, I will lick the COVID and everyone around me. I don't care.
I'm really.
By the way, I've also been vaccinated. Are you?
That's right. Yeah, you haven't turned into a lizard.
I have not turned into a lizard. I am not a 5G tower. I have not developed autism.
That's good.
I don't know what are the. Okay, could you explain the 5G tower thing to me, because I didn't understand it. Okay.
No, I have no idea. No clue. I just know it's a joke that runs along with getting vaccinated. How many shots did you have to take? 1 or 2?
I have to take 2 total. I've had 1. I'm scheduled for another one.
So I've got a friend, lives about 3 blocks from here. The second one is just wreaking hell all over him. He said no problem with the first, but the second one, for some reason, has kicked his ass. And then I saw a bunch of people.
Like what's happened to him?
There's like dry heaves involved, and I mean it's running a fever. So it sounded like more like flu symptoms to me. So. But yeah, there was a bunch of people that kind of chimed in and said that they had gotten the second one as well, and they experienced some. Again, it just depends on the person. You could have a really shitty reaction to it, or you can, my body aches and then hurts for one day, and then you're good to go.
Yeah, my arm really hurt where they gave the shot, and I was kind of achy, and I didn't feel great. Within the first 24 hours that I had. I was also monitored for 15 minutes to see if I had an allergic reaction. Nothing of note happened. And then for the next 24 hours, I kind of just felt blah. But nothing. Not that I worked. I just went about my life, and it's been about a week probably since then. I felt fine.
It's been a while. Well, just when you get that second one, keep us updated, because that one seems to be the one that really does you in for some reason.
I will let you know if I turn into Godzilla.
Perfect.
But we started all this with, are you feeling, at least through some of these albums, and I guess with Sleepwalkers was one for sure, are you feeling that sense of anxiety and frustration from the band?
I mean, yeah. When you look at some of these tracks, it's definitely what I get out of this. And the ones that I really paid attention to and dove into, there's a commentary on just about everything. I think the next song that we get, track 10, is more of a love song, but it seems like there is commentary with just about every other song that's on this album. As to whether it's tied to the anxiety of COVID, you could probably make arguments for it. I didn't come out of this going, oh my gosh, they had such a time in 2020. It's more like, it's just them saying, okay, hey, this is This is our take on things, and that's about as far as it went. It's funny. I was trying to tie some of these songs into the Absurd Circus, and now that the picture is painted, that you're looking at their view of the world, or their view sometimes of the world. Makes a lot of sense when you look at some of these songs. That I think is the overall reaching aspect of the concept of what they're going for.
So the thing that we all focus on is COVID, because it was such a disruption to the natural course of events.
Oh yeah,
in a year. But if you'll remember, going back to a year ago, what was the first thing that happened? The first thing were the wildfires.
Oh yeah, the wildfires from Australia, right?
Right. I think Australia went up in flames, all of it.
Yes, every single bit of
it. It's just ash now.
Yeah. It's called Australia.
Something happened in February. I don't remember what. But there was something that happened in February where it was cataclysmic, because everybody kept putting up the meme of January wildfires, February whatever it was, March pandemic, and April was monster chickens, or
yes.
April was alien invasions. Yep. April was always some sort of science fiction end of the world kind of a thing.
Progressively getting worse. Yes.
Yeah. So I think that's
Murder Hornets. Murder Hornets was one of them. Yeah,
Murder Hornets was a thing. Over the summer were the Black Lives Matter riots.
Yep.
We kind of pointed over at Europe and the Middle East and was like, what are they got that we ain't got? Riots! And then we started doing it for some odd reason. I can't remember what... There was a lot, though. A lot that happened in 2020 outside of the pandemic where people were like, oh my God, the world is ending.
Did you have a chance to watch Death to 2020 on Netflix yet?
I have... No.
Oh my gosh. You will laugh, sir, because it is exactly what you're talking about. It's a comedic look, hosted by different hosts, such as Samuel L. Jackson and the girl that everybody ran off social media, Leslie Jones. And basically a month-by-month look at 2020. And it's so funny because where they end it is shortly before all the shit hits. If they could have just done one more month and went into 2021, it would have been so much. They could have said so much more with everything that happened at the Capitol. But I would highly suggest you watch it, Mark. You will laugh, sir.
All right. Maybe
right.
In between all the other shit I got to watch for podcasts.
Oh, wham. It's an hour. It's about an hour and a half, if that. You can fit it into your tight fucking schedule.
You know what's hilarious about that is I sit here and I panic because I don't think I'm going to have time to watch all the stuff I already cover. And then what's the first thing I do in the chat? Hey guys, anyone want to cover this show? And then get bitchy when no one answered me.
I answered just so you wouldn't get bitchy at me. That was the whole reason. I was in the middle of trying to help somebody out and pay them off, and I was like, shit, I better answer Mark real quick.
I better tell him no. So he won't ask me. Just as an aside, and this has nothing to do with anything, but a simple no will suffice, and I honestly will respect that. Not everybody wants to podcast all the time. Not everybody wants to podcast about all the things. I get it. What I don't need is an editorial remark like someone did, where it was this IP looks like crap. That's not what I asked you. I just yes or no.
Yes or no. That's all it has to be.
And then everybody else again doesn't even answer. They just ostriches, heads in the fucking sand.
Maybe he won't notice I'm here.
I feel like virtually everyone put on fake hats and mustaches. I'm not here, sir.
You can't see me.
Right. But as soon as one of them wants to do something else, that's when suddenly the mustache comes off, and it's like, hey, how about this? It's like...
Remember me?
Yeah. I don't have 900 other things on that we're going to talk about this month. It's fine. We'll do your thing. It's good. It's fine.
It's all good. He's not resentful at all.
No, I'm not bitchy about this in the slightest.
None.
By the way, someone did volunteer but volunteered after saying, "But I wasn't asked."
Okay. So you need to call out everybody specifically.
I apparently whenever I again, we have multiple chats and we have multiple ways of communicating with one another. This person isn't in that chat, and so that's why they weren't asked.
My bad. All right. Well,
yeah,
that's on you. So.
Yeah, apparently I need to just blast everywhere. Help wanted.
That is you, sir. All you.
And I won't get into any more of that. But all right, A Reason to Survive and. Finally bitchin'. No, finally free. Here we go. All right. Before we close out on our final thoughts, did you get any reviews on this? Did you happen to see what the rest of the world thought of this thing?
This actually didn't get very many reviews. One of the things I do, I know I've said this before, is that I'll usually hop on YouTube and just punch in the album and then review, just to see what other people have thought. And you would be surprised as to how absent that YouTube is from any reviews of this album. There was one reviewer who was Italian, and I couldn't understand a word he said. So started that video and then had to stop it. And then I watched one other video where a guy unboxed the album. He hadn't even listened to the album yet. So there really isn't much on YouTube as far as that goes right now anyway. I know this album, just released not too long ago. What was it, a couple days ago? Mm-hmm. So, that's fine. As for, hopping on to some articles, most of the reaction has been pretty positive. As a matter of fact, I thought there was one negative review. I was like, I better pull this up because I want to read some of it off of there. And as I got further into it, it was actually more positive than I thought it was. Initially, I think they were criticizing some of their earlier albums, and then as you get further into the article, they praise this one pretty well. So from what I understand, none of our big reviewers, I'll read something off of DagerDog.com here real quick, which this kind of summed it up for me. It says, Labyrinth also puts the power into their progressive metal, with many songs being fast and heavy, like Live Today, The Absurd Circus, or Sleepwalker. Alternatively, some songs turn on the juxtaposition of lightness, often with vocals, and metal heaviness and the riffage and tempo, as with As Long As It Lasts or The Unexpected. With a reason to survive, Labyrinth delivers a classic metal ballad featuring Taranti's, not Tetrazzini, Taranti's fine voice over acoustic guitar wrapped in a symphonic synth context. So there's kind of a quick album review in that one little paragraph. And as you go further into the article, it's praising. So I think a lot of what you're seeing, I think it's not being picked up by mainstream metal blogs and web pages, because this isn't really a mainstream metal album. This is progressive metal. This is progressive power metal. So, but I will say it's definitely competently put together, and there's bright spots on this album. If it's for me, that's kind of up in the air. There's some songs on here I'm like, oh yes, that's great, but it's not stuff that really makes me want to come back and revisit the album and really landed Labyrinth on the map for myself. But I could see it definitely. If you are a fan, just like you said earlier, Mark, if you're a fan of this album, a fan of this type of genre, then this band and this album is going to fit right in there like that glove you want. So go ahead with your final thoughts here, Mark.
Average progressive metal album. I like the 80s elements to it. I would say there's nothing inherently wrong with it. It's competent, so I'm going to go ahead. I don't want to give it a C, because C always feels very negative to me.
If anything, if you're going to go that low, you give it a C+, but really...
I'm going to go ahead and give it a B-.
There you go. That feels... I feel comfortable with that.
Because the other thing is, I know, because having just done the end of the year show, the problem is when I start grading too high, and we're like, well, you have 50 A's to choose from. What's your favorite? Fuck.
Yeah, you can't do that to every album.
Right. And then the whole grading process just becomes, pointless. All right, so that's the. You want to give it? Do you got anything else to say about the show?
No. We can go ahead and close on out. I didn't really have much else to say other than hey, you're going to dig it if you like that type of music.
All right, we're going to try to get back into at least a semi-regular schedule. I know, we haven't really. This is the first one we've done for the month of January, and January is basically over now. But we'll have one. We'll have a couple in February. We're going to go a little off the beaten path, and I'm not sticking strictly to it has to be hard metal anymore. I think there's just stuff that I'd like to talk about that is in the rock genre, and if it happens to fall into the metal subgenre of rock, great. So implies the name Metal Hammer of Doom. But I think if there's an album that's coming out that I'm just interested in, and I want to share it with Jesse, and I want to share my thoughts with the rest of the world, then we're going to do that. And in the spirit of that, one of my favorite bands, and a band that, because of COVID, we didn't get to see last year on tour, they postponed it to this year, and crossing fingers it doesn't get canceled again, is Weezer. And Weezer's putting out 2 albums this year. One is coming out actually this week. It's called OK Human. And it, again, is a reflection of all that happened last year. And then later on in May, they're releasing Van Weezer, which was supposed to come out before this, but COVID. OK Human this week, and then we'll talk about it next week. We're going to bring it to you on February 4th. February 5th, the new Corporal Cloney comes out, and we love our folk metal, don't we, Jesse?
Oh, do we ever.
So we'll do the new Corporal Cloney album on February 10th. February 18th is the new Serenia. We do love our progressive metal band sung by women.
We do.
And we'll skip a week. I'm going to wrap Jesse up in some television talk. And then we'll be back March 3rd with the new Epica album. We like Epica. Epica's cool.
That we do. We do.
So that's what we got going on in the month of February. Jesse, occasionally you like to grace us with your presence on other people's podcasts. What do you got cooking?
Yeah. So our latest episode of Unspoken Issues, almost forgot the title, Unspoken Issues, which is a comic book podcast focusing on 90s comics. Chris Armstrong and I, oh boy, we had a discussion about Street Fighter number 3. Should be able to find that on the W2Mnet podcast feed. Fun stuff right there. Just listen to all the hilarity that happens in that issue, and it'll obviously you'll come away understanding why Malibu said, you can't do this with our property anymore. No Street Fighter for you. So, upcoming here, probably within a week, we should be dropping our latest episode of Unspoken Issues, which is on Crimson, a cliffhanger comic that I barely recalled the imprint, but I recognized some of the creators. We're going to be talking about Crimson, so if you dig comic books, you might want to check that out. And syndicated source material, it hit, I think, this past Saturday. About 100 and some episodes that haven't hit the airwaves on the W2Mnet podcast feed. And this last week, I believe, was our 6th episode. I could be wrong. But it was Gavin Napier and myself talking Freddy versus Jason versus Ash. And cleaned it up. Sounds a lot better. You could actually hear us talking, which is always a good thing. And if you dig comics, you can check that out. I think that's about it. I don't know if I showed up on anybody else's podcast. If I did, it's been a complete blur.
Alrighty. Myself and Alexis Haina did the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina issue 6 through 8. We also wrapped up the Netflix series with our discussion of Part 4. Tomorrow she's back to talk the next set of Looney Tunes cartoons. They're calling it Season 1C. And the Podsman and I will be reviewing Superstar Spectacle, which is the WWE's show that they aired in India. Saturday nights, all right, for fights. Caleb Plant and Caleb Truax will be fighting on Fox in prime time. So myself and Robert Winfrey will be doing a watch-along for that. Next week, Cole Marentet will be on to talk All Hail Megatron. Damn You Hollywood is back. Yeah, there's not a lot of stuff to see in the theaters, but, you know, we're going to make some hay out of some Netflix movies and whatnot. So the first one is that Anthony Mackie movie that came out a week or two ago, Outside the Wire. We're going to review that. We'll also be reviewing the Royal Rumble, the aforementioned Weezer OK Human. And before I shuffle my kids off to Lakeland to see Knucklemania. You know what Knucklemania is, Jesse?
Sounds violent.
Knucklemania is the newest Bare Knuckle Fighting Championships pay-per-view that is taking place here in Florida with a crowd. With a crowd, Jesse.
Oh, wow.
They haven't canceled this one yet. They haven't canceled fans in Lakeland. Not yet, at least.
Cancel culture. I swear.
But it's being headlined by Paige Van Zandt, who is the dainty little girl that used to fight in the UFC, was on Dancing with the Stars. She's in all the commercials. She's a hot little number. And now she's headlining Knucklemania. Knucklemania.
Women hitting each other. Sounds fantastic.
But before that, myself and Chris Bailey will be reviewing AEW Dynamite Beach Bash, featuring the wedding of Kip Sabian and Penelope Ford. Can you believe it? They're finally getting married.
I had no idea
who any of those people were.
You didn't let me finish.
All right. Let's go ahead and get on out of here. Thanks for joining us here on the Metal Hammer of Doom, our first Metal Hammer of Doom of 2021. By Jesse Starcher, I'm Mark Radulich. Be well, be safe, and behave.